Good evening. Thank you for joining us virtually at the Scheller College of Business at Georgia Tech. I'm Maryam Alavi, Dean of Scheller College, and tonight's conversation is with Mr. Ed Bastian, CEO of Delta Airlines. The COVID-19 global pandemic has changed everything for businesses, particularly businesses in the travel and airline industry, including Delta Airlines. Ed has graciously accepted our invitation to share his insights and experience in leading through this crisis. As CEO of Delta Airlines, Ed Bastian leads a team of 75,000 professionals that is building the world's premier international airline. Ed joined Delta in 1998 as Vice President, Finance and Controller. In 2005, he was promoted to CFO and was appointed as Delta's President in 2007. Ed was named CEO in 2016. Ed, thank you for making time for this conversation. I can imagine demands on your time and the myriad of issues that you have to address on a daily basis. We are especially appreciative of the time that you're spending with us this evening. I will ask you a number of questions, and we will then open it to the audience. Audience, please submit your questions in a concise form through the Q&A feature. There is an icon on the right-hand side of your screen for Q&A, and please input your questions there, and Ed will answer as many questions as time permits toward the end of the program. So Ed, let's get started, shall we?
We shall. Thanks, Maryam.
So let's get started by looking back at December of 2019. Under your leadership, Delta Airlines was the largest airline in the world by revenue, assets value, and market capitalization. The company had successfully launched various digital innovations, and you were growing the international market, Delta. In fact, you have made some investments in LATAM Airlines Group, headquartered in Santiago, Chile, and considered the largest Latin American airline. Frankly, Ed, you made it look really easy to run a very complex global company that moves tens of thousands of people, equipment, airplanes, and parts across the globe, 365 days a year, 24/7. And then in March of 2020, the global pandemic hits. How did Delta absorb the shock and started to adjust? Walk us through those early weeks and early months in March.
Well, thank you again for having me, Maryam. I enjoy our conversations, enjoy spending time with the students of the school, and certainly as the hometown airline of Atlanta, we know all of you are great Delta customers. So I also look at you as our customers, not just our students. It was quite a shock. It was truly a once in a century event. You know, that phrase has been used to describe what we're all going through this year. We were at the highest of highs, as you mentioned. We were the highest performing airline in the world on an historic basis. Profits, market cap, revenues, customer satisfaction, profit sharing for our employees. And then all of a sudden it's gone. We went from that level of profits right up through pretty much the end of February to the month of April. which saw revenues at only about 3% of what the prior April had been, gone from an all-time high down to 3%. So, a lot of businesses in the pandemic have been hurt hard. Uh, Few have been decimated the way the airlines have, and any business that's centered around mobility, it was the main businesses that were to be shut in view of safety. Our team saw this coming a bit. I don't think any of us saw it coming at its full impact. We stopped flights to China in late January. I know the president put the restrictions in he talks about in February. We'd already stopped flying to China a couple weeks prior to that. So we had an indication things were challenging, and we were a bit nervous about the virus. But when it did land on our shores, particularly coming into New York and the Northeast, we knew that we needed to move fast. The theme that we had, Maryam, at that time was the word that I've talked a lot about is protect. We needed to protect our people, protect our customers. We needed to protect our cash, our financial resources, but we also needed to protect our future to make sure that anything that we were doing to respond to the pandemic, we preserve the ability to have the future that we still aspire to this day.
In addition to COVID-19 pandemic, businesses now dealing with racial inequalities and injustice. How is Delta addressing these issues, Ed?
Well, in many ways, the pandemic and the juxtaposition of the pandemic with the challenges we see in our nation around racial inequality, systemic bias, systemic racism are being heard loud and clear against the silence of the pandemic. The pandemic has caused all of us, in many ways, to slow down and to focus on what's most important, our health, our safety, protect our family, protect our businesses. And when we all saw the horrific tragedy, the killing of George Floyd in late May, it all caused us to be able to see it through a different lens. We all were struck by it. I was speaking with someone today, and I mentioned that, if that terrible tragedy had occurred last year, would we have all stopped to take pause and focus on it? I'm not sure. Not sure about that. But we needed to have the pandemic really amplify the voices of those that have been hurt through inequity, people that are not getting the same advantage, the same opportunity that many of us enjoy in society. And it caused me within Delta to look inside our company and see the extent to which, implicit bias exists, systemic equality issues exist, and we can see it. None of us are overt about it, but when you see the gap that we have between particularly our Black and African American community workforce and the number of leaders at the top of the company, there's a meaningful gap, and I've been very transparent, accountable for closing that gap. We need to do better. We need to lift our Black brothers and sisters forward. I take it personally because I like to think about the 75,000 employees of Delta as my family. I look to them to support me, and it's my job to protect and support them in turn. And there's a lot we're doing at Delta to address the issue, but the first and foremost way is to better understand it, to better appreciate the walk that our Black community, particularly here in Atlanta, goes through that we don't see, and try to understand how we can be more, not just understand and appreciate the challenge, but be better able to respond to it through decisive action. And that's what we're doing at Delta. Spending a lot of time understanding, a lot of time in reflection, and making certain that everyone knows we're accountable to do a better job there.
I have read some of the information that you have put out regarding the plans of Delta in this particular area. Very impressive. So let me just switch gears and start focusing on customers. How are you building trust with customers to instill confidence in the safety of travel?
Well, that's our main goal through the pandemic. Our business goal is to have our customers regain their confidence in air travel. And I tell our employees, as I tell our customers, is our goal is that customers on board Delta should take the same level of confidence in their health aboard our flights as they do their flight safety. Last year, 200 million people, put their flight safety and the confidence in Delta to take care of getting them safely to their destination in an effective, efficient, safe, and comfortable manner. And we need 200 million customers to feel the same way about their health when they're on board our planes. And that's what we're doing. And we're doing everything and have re-examined every aspect of the journey to find out where we can make improvements to protect their health against the risks of COVID and the pandemic. It goes from how we board the planes. Now we board the planes from the back to the front. How we clean the planes. We electrostatically fog every single flight and wipe down every surface before we take off every single day. We ensure and enforce the mask policy. If you fly in Delta, you will not gain access to the airport or the plane unless you're wearing your mask, and we will insist upon you continuing to maintain and wear your mask during your journey. And if you don't want to abide by our request or instructions, you will not have the privilege to fly Delta in the future, and we're very strict about that. We ensure that we have the cleanest air possible on board our flights through the HEPA filtration systems that completely change out the air every 2 to 4 minutes aboard the flight while the journey while it's in flight, with half of that air coming in from outside the cabin, completely fresh air. And the filtration systems push air down from the ceiling down through the floor. So I tell everyone, when you're on board the plane, take that gasket that's above your seat, that's a bit of an air conditioning vent, and open it up and have focus towards your knees or towards the seat in front of you, because that promotes the airflow and it pushes air down. And we know the quality of those air systems on board our planes are better than any air quality anywhere. And we test them. We have monitors. It's equivalent to what you'd find in a hospital operating room or any clean room environment. So it's the combination of all of those factors that gives me confidence in our teams taking good care of customers. The question I often get asked is, why do you have confidence in the safety on board your planes? Well, if our planes were not safe, our flight attendants, our pilots, our airport agents would be getting sick, because they live in the environment. And the reality is they are getting sick at much, much lower incident rates than the general public is in any of the geographies or communities that we operate out of. So it's the combination of those things. And customers tell us, we see it in our customer satisfaction surveys. We measure Net Promoter Score, and we're huge believers in analytics, as I think everyone knows, and measuring performance and how to improve performance with the quality of the feedback that our customers give us. Last summer, we ran at a Net Promoter Score of about 50, which for us at our scale on a global basis is really good. It's the best performing of any global airline out there. This summer, we're running at a 75. That's on a basis of 100. So you can see the dramatic improvement that our customers have scored us in terms of all the features I mentioned, with people knowing that we're taking their health as our top priority aboard our planes.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. As a customer of Delta, I feel so much better about flying Delta now. Thank you.
Sure.
Has there been any silver lining to these times of unprecedented change and upheaval that you can share with us?
Well, I mentioned at the start that protect was the word I focused on in the early months, protecting our people, their health, protecting our customers. I just talked about what we're doing there, protecting our cash, but protecting our future. as well. And we are investing aggressively into the future, and we've not stopped because of the pandemic. So, for example, we're building new airports up in New York at LaGuardia Airport, or in LA at LAX. Salt Lake City, we just opened up a new airport. One of the challenges of building new airports and infrastructure while you're operating it at full capacity is it's very difficult to build on the house that you're also operating out of. So we've taken advantage of the time to shorten and accelerate, push the construction forward, accelerate the completion times, taking at least 2 years out of that journey. And so it's coming in at lower cost, as well as giving us an opportunity to get the amenities to customers sooner, so that when people start to travel again over the next year or two, they're going to find new amenities, new opportunities in the airports. Technology, we're modernizing our technology. We're going on a journey to the cloud here over the next 12 to 24 months, at a time when volumes are lower and there's lower risk, and we can move faster through that journey. We're modernizing our fleet. Any airplane that was scheduled for retirement in the next 5 years, we've already retired. So, when people get aboard our planes, they're going to be newer and they're going to be younger by default. So there's a lot in there that we are doing to accelerate our forward push. But the other thing I think that's important, Maryam, is it's taught us the power of connections. Our business is about connecting people. And we like to say at Delta, our mission is that no one better connect the world than Delta. And, the pandemic is the complete opposite of that. That's we're supposed to be distant. We're supposed to be isolated. We're not supposed to be connecting other through means like this technology, which I don't think is a very good substitute for being in person. And so it's reinforced our focus and the importance of our mission. The world feels more distant and more disconnected now than any time in my lifetime. I feel that. And I'm sure many people feel that as well. And we know that travel is the thing that will bring us closer together when we know we can go out and be back with family and friends, or take trips, or do business on an international as well as a national scale. And that's the power of what we provide, the power of our service. So there's been a lot of people, asking questions about what's the future of air travel, and will business travel come back, and what's the future of airlines? I think the future of airlines is brighter than ever, because the thing that this world needs more than ever right now is to be together, and we're going to be the force that enables that.
I agree. I think, again, from a customer's perspective, one of the things that I think has been a silver lining is the Delta Care standard that is now becoming industry leading, that you talked about, which is the way you clean the airplanes, the air filtering, etc. And that frankly has made air travel more reliable, cleaner, and safer in the long term, I believe. So that, from my perspective as a customer, that's another silver lining, if you will. Go ahead.
We're moving forward, taking a lot of those new improvements forward with us. We're going to be a more resilient airline and company that people can place even greater confidence in towards the future.
You talked a little bit about your plans, your protecting capital, making some enhancement, taking care of your employees, your customers. Anything else in terms of your vision for Delta Airlines post-COVID? How do you think Delta will keep climbing using your company's tagline?
Yeah. Well, it seems like it's years ago, but actually at the start of this year in January, I delivered the opening keynote at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, the biggest gathering of technologists in the world and innovation, and 200,000 people there. And it was quite a thrill for me to be able to provide that. It was about an hour and a half presentation into the future of travel, how technology is going to change, the airport environment, and the innovation, digital experiences that we bring, and how we're going to make travel easier and simpler and more efficient for the future. all those opportunities are still there. The pandemic hasn't changed any of that. The vision for travel for me is one where people will continue to aspire to learn, to grow, to see, to be with people. We may use video tools that we've now become more accustomed to complement our relationships, but they're not a substitute for our relationships. And whether it's the Fly Delta app and using that as a digital concierge, which we talked a lot about, whether it's the technology innovations we're putting into our airports, including features like Misapplied Sciences have, where you look at boarding gates and signs and the big screens in airports, and creating an opportunity that no matter what language your home language, and it'll have a personal message to you as to where you're going, and you can find your way through a crowded airport terminal. I long for those days to start seeing crowds back in our airports, and people looking forward to the joy of travel, because travel is a joyous experience. One of the things we've lost in our society, in our country, Maryam, through the pandemic is the ability to plan for the future, to make those trips, to make those plans, to create, the anticipation and the yearning for the experiences that you're going to enjoy in the future. All that's enabled by travel and hospitality, and we're a big enabler of that. So I think that, the sooner that we can get out, and we've been traveling throughout. I've traveled every single week throughout the pandemic, so I've been experiencing it. More and more people are coming, and more people appreciate just how good an experience is, and they're telling other people, and they're bringing more people back to travel. And we're about 30% of the way back from where we need to go, and I think as all the work being done around vaccines and testing and rapid testing and tracing and the therapeutics to help cure the concerns of people if they were to catch the disease, as that cumulatively starts to take effect over the next 6 months, I think there's going to be a big surge for people wanting to get back out again and see people and places and things they've been missing.
I agree, and there's probably some kind of a pent-up demand for travel after we live through COVID-19 and post-COVID. That's so right. My next question is, many leaders seem to have been running on adrenaline over these past few months. And any advice on how to take care of oneself and during these difficult times and challenging times, so that one remains positive, resilient, and energetic?
Well, it's you're right. The first couple months was adrenaline rush, not necessarily in a good way, but we were running to the fire. We were running to save our company, to protect our employees, protect our customers, and there was a surge of energy that was created, though we didn't quite know what we were going to do once we got there. And now, while we understand much more about the disease, about the path forward, the time it's going to take, and the things that we all need to do to protect ourselves individually and our families, I think what I've been advising our team is to know it's going to be a journey. It's going to take us a couple years to get to a point where we start to get to our new normal, and at least in our travel business. And as long as you know that it's going to be a long journey, I equate it to a marathon, having run a couple marathons in my life. You know to protect yourself. You know to not get out ahead of yourself, not to think it's all going to be over by spring or the summer. It's going to take a while, but every day we're going to get better. We keep focused on the future. We don't look back. We take good care and realize that we can make real differences as to how we build this company up. We realize our responsibility of bringing this airline up it's a responsibility to the world, not just to our own stakeholders, that Delta plays a really important part in the world. And honestly, our leadership of our company has never been more important than in its 100-year history than it is right now. And for whatever reason, we were appointed to be leaders in this age. And there's a real privilege that comes with that. There's an honor that comes with that. And there's as compared to a burden. And I tend to look at it as the positive rather than the cost of carrying that burden forward. So I think that your mental outlook and attitude is really critical at this time. You need to take care of your health. I've been a runner. I had to stop after my last marathon a couple of years ago, but I'm now a Peloton junkie. And when I finish this tonight, I'm going to jump on the Peloton and do a Peloton ride. And you got to keep yourself physically as well as mentally alert, because this is going to be a long road back, but it's going to be a very rewarding road back. And I don't think about it as building back what we lost. I look at it as building the future we want to create.
That's great advice, and I like this aspect of attitude, adjusting one's mindset and looking at it as a long-term and in positive lights. So I want to take you back, Ed, to a few years ago. You were one of the key people who led Delta through the aftermath of 9/11. When the 9/11 tragedy hit, things came undone quickly and Delta kind of seemed to have lost its way. The company came out of bankruptcy in 2007, and as CFO, you were a key architect of Delta's restructuring. So you have gone through some of these major challenges and crises before. So looking back, reflecting back at that experience, and then thinking about what you're going through now, how have these experiences influenced you and shaped you as a leader?
Well, we thought at the time that 9/11 was our defining existential event in our industry and maybe in our nation during our lifetime. But the reality is this is far bigger in impact and in challenge than 9/11, the Great Recession, and probably several combined. We do have a lot to go on. One thing that I learned from those experiences was the need for speed. You need to keep moving. You've got to keep focused on the future. You've got to realize that there are things that are outside of your control. You can't worry about them. You can't fret about them. You've got to focus really on the things you can control. Government aid, there's been a lot in the papers the last few weeks around whether the government's going to extend the CARES Act to the airlines in an extension. I don't know if they will or not. It's looking less likely that a stimulus plan may come about anytime soon to protect the jobs of many of the airline workers. But Delta, we already had moved. We had made provision assuming it wasn't going to go through, and we were able to protect and save the jobs of all of our flight attendants, all of our ground staff, basically all of our employees, exception of our pilots, and we're working with them as well because of the union relationship. We have a separate negotiation to go through. And our employees volunteered, took time off, saved us enormous cost, and as a result, we don't have to furlough anybody, through this really horrific time, or go through pay cuts through a really horrific time, because we move fast. We engage with the people. And I think the second thing is communications. It's very, very easy when times are difficult to step away, and when you don't have the answers to want to figure out what you're going to say or where you're going to go before you come out with your strategy and your plan. The reality is it's just the opposite. You need to be out and communicating right from the get-go. And let people know what you know, and let people know what you don't know, and let them see you and hear you repeatedly as they do every single week. I'm on a video town hall with thousands, if not tens of thousands, of our Delta colleagues, letting them know where we stand in the journey. And I often tell them that I don't have all the answers, but every week goes by, we get more answers, and we communicate as we go. And they feel a pride and an ownership of the journey as a result of, rather than being someone that's a participant. They're an active stakeholder, and that communications, that morale. I'll tell you, Delta, throughout many of our employee groups has never been higher, despite the fact that the uncertainty to the angst has also never been more stressful.
Is there a question that I did not ask and you wish that I did? Anything else you want to add?
No, I think we can go to questions if that's possible from the audience.
Sure. So let's go to the questions for Ed.
Thank you very much, Dean. And our first question is from Patrick. And Ed, that question is, how is Delta approaching a push towards sustainability in the coming years? And is Delta contributing to research for more fuel-efficient air travel?
Absolutely, Trevor. We announced on Valentine's Day this year that we were committing to be carbon neutral for the next decade. It was $1 billion investment that we announced on that day. And while certainly the plan several weeks later as the pandemic hit, our long-term focus hasn't changed, and we are making those investments. We'll continue to make investments to reduce the footprint that we create right now. Part of it will be invested in offset programs, whether it's reforestation efforts going, whether it's in South America or in Africa, where we've got a couple of big projects we're working on that help to recapture carbon from the air, or the investment that we're making and focused on sustainable aviation fuels and the energy source of the future. Sustainable aviation fuels and biofuels have a long ways to go. Right now, they're not commercially feasible. They're probably 10x the cost of our current fossil fuel energy. But we've got to have a mindset that figures out how we bring innovation and scale in an environmentally responsible way to be able to create the sustainable source of energy for our industry for years to come. So there's a lot we're doing in that space, but we're just as committed that $1 billion is still intact, and that will be the cost of offsetting the footprint that we'll be creating in the next decade.
We have a question for Dean Alavi, and that question is, what has the impact of COVID-19 been on the school?
And business schools in general, like every other industry and organization, of course, we were impacted by COVID-19. But I would say the impact on the Scheller College has been that it expedited technology adoption and transformation at a much deeper level at our school. Teaching, advising, learning assessment, admission process, career services, just about every activity that we have, were all changed and to a great extent digitized and taken online. I would say that disruptions brought on by COVID-19 really provided opportunity for us for rapid innovation. We did things that were new and different for us, and we had to do it very rapidly. But in my opinion, a very important outcome of COVID-19 impact on our school was that it affirmed and strengthened our commitment to our educational mission of developing principled and inclusive business leaders who leverage technology to create value for multiple stakeholders and improve human condition. And that affirmation that we're on the right path and we're doing the right thing, to me personally, meant a lot.
Thank you, Dean. And our next question is for Ed. This is from Roxana, and she's wondering if Ed can share his strategy for testing, both for employees and customers.
Sure. Well, one of the things that we're doing to protect our people is to test them. And we've been actively doing that for the last several months, working both with the Mayo Clinic out of Rochester, Minnesota, as well as Emory in Atlanta and Emory Healthcare, as well as working with Quest Diagnostics, the big lab company, and CVS as well around rapid testing. And we've developed and we've got a really good sense for where our people stand relative to the virus. That's why I was able to make the comment that we know definitively that our infection rates are substantially lower than any of the other geographies we fly into, because we test and retest our employees on a regular basis to be able to identify those that are asymptomatic. We have found that testing, and I have found that testing is going to be really important, not as much for domestic travel in the U.S., but to open up international travel. And we're working with certain airports around the world to put into place a testing regimen so that customers can get a rapid test at the airport here in Atlanta before they depart, land in Rome, say, and not be subject to quarantine restrictions when they get to Europe. If we get the Italian authorities' support, and we may need to have a rapid test in Italy when we land, but whatever we have to do, testing is going to open up the key to international travel. Right now, I think there's too much concern and nervousness in the various regulatory authorities around the spread of the virus until the virus is contained. I think it's going to take some time before we're confident globally the virus is contained. Vaccines could be helpful to inoculate people and enable them to travel, but I think testing is going to be much more powerful. And we're working with the CDC and Dr. Redfield here in Atlanta around the testing protocol, and hopefully Atlanta can be a pilot for international flights.
So our next question is from Nate, and Nate is asking how Delta has adapted to remote work, and if you see lasting impacts in the company's future as the result of any adaptations that you've been forced to make.
I think it was surprisingly quick, the adaptation. It was forced. We closed the office and we needed to get people out of the office. So we didn't have a choice for many of our office staff to work from home. Personally, I was in the office through most of the period, so I never really tried to work from home too much. But our staff did, and we're still not technically open as an office. Our general offices, we're going to be opening them the first week in November, starting to bring people back into the office. I think it's important that we start doing that. But people have, they're very creative, and they use all the various video technology tools available to them to stay connected and to get work done. Fortunately, our staff was, they knew each other, they could work well, they could go through a short period of time like this year to take the work that was done physically in the office to their physical homes and continue to use technology to manage through that. But I think we're finding that for a good third to half of our people, it's really challenging for them to continue to do that, without having the space at home to work from, having kids at home, having other complications. And then on the flip side, you have kids in school and they're at home going virtual school, and the demands on some of our working families about having to work and monitor the school activities of their children at the same time in an environment that is equipped for neither. So we're gonna get back into the office. I think long term we will have some form of work from home. I think it'll be a small proportion of our total work. I really believe that we work better when we're together, but we'll see as we go there.
Our next question is from Marcus, who's asking about leadership. And Marcus asks, what do you think makes you an effective leader? And is there a particular set of skills that you've been working on during these times to help you lead? And finally, he's wondering if there's anything you've been working on personally that you would recommend for aspiring future leaders.
Wow, it's a big question. I would say one of the things that I try real hard to do is to be accessible to our team, to our people, not just our leadership team, but our frontline team, the 75,000 employees who call Delta home. I like to feel like they can reach me on any issues of any challenge at any time, and they can. They all know my email. They all know how to reach me, and it goes directly to me. It doesn't get filtered through an office or someone monitoring my mail. We're all, by the way, customers. I'm accessible to customers too for that same reason. When I became CEO, I guess almost 5 years ago now, I was advised to get a secret email and protect it dearly, so that people can reach you only if you let them try to find where you're at. And I never followed that advice, and I think as a result of that, people have come to know me well, and they understand my expectations. I think another thing that we have learned about leadership during this time is that it's an opportunity for people to grow, for people to learn, to rethink about where they're going. It's an exhilarating time if you allow yourself to think in that light. So the tragedy of the disease is crippling, and we've lost some employees to the disease. I think everyone knows somebody that's been inflicted in some difficult way. But when you think about building for the future and creating an opportunity to rebuild our companies, we're trying to do it and giving a lot of new employees new roles, moving people around in the operations, giving them different perspectives, trying to really take advantage of all the things that we wanted to do, but we were really too busy to do. Now we're not so busy, and we have opportunities to take advantage of that. So I think giving people opportunities and chance and trying out new tasks and new skills during this area. For myself personally, I think it's been a time of a lot of reflection, a lot of focus on purpose. As you look at the world, the one thing I think it's for all business leaders, when I talk to a lot of CEOs, we share this in common. It gives us an opportunity to think about the purpose of what we do, the purpose of our business missions, and the importance of them, since we've been unable to fulfill them. And we've all been forced, as we think about what we're going to do in the future, is to either affirm those purposes or to adjust those purposes or to change them in some way, because the purpose of business is not about profits. The purpose of business is about creating value for your community, for your employees, for your owners, and your customers, and being in a position to affect change for the good in society. And we've seen all that through this pandemic, whether it's how we've been able to care for our people that have been sick and protect them carefully, the racial equity, the conversation I had earlier with Maryam, and the work we're doing to address that through using the pandemic as the opportunity to have the voices magnified and amplified, or whether it's the employees, or customers now going on Delta and saying, wow, this experience is not only as good as I remember, it's actually better than I remember, and I want you to continue to do that as we go forward. And while we can't keep those middle seats blocked forever, we're going to keep the middle seats blocked here for probably another 6 months or so, until people are comfortable filling those seats, and that's what I call the Delta difference.
And our next.
I'm sorry. All of this discussion brought a question to my mind, and if I may ask another question, Ed. Sure. As a business school dean, I think a lot about future of work and how to prepare students for future of work. How do you think work has been changing, and how can we best prepare our graduates for the world of the future and future of work?
Yeah, well, it certainly has benefited those that have a fluency, and their businesses have already adapted digitally to the future. You hear it said that we've been on a digital journey. Many of us, our companies, as well as our society. We're gonna move 5 years into the future this year alone on that digital journey, and transforming how we buy, how we sell, how we connect, how we communicate, how we consume. And companies that are well positioned, that have the infrastructure and the tools, in place. And fortunately at Delta, we do have them in place because we've been investing in that journey, have been able to take advantage of it. And we've needed to use those tools to communicate with our customers throughout the journey and keep them updated in various ways on what's changed about the flights and how we've been able to reanalyze market opportunities and be able to get better insights as to what customers are telling us that we can do to improve it, whether it's the cleanliness of our product or any other changes in the experience going forward. So I'd say that the technology, the advancement of the digital age, the transformation to digital has grown rapidly, and I think everyone's going to, in their own way, as they think about the future, their job itself is not going to be the same when they go back to the office.
So thank you for saying that, and this was not prearranged because just like Delta has a tagline of keep climbing, the tagline for Scheller College of Business is tech savvy and business smart. So I was delighted to hear your comments. Thank you.
Very glad I could deliver for you.
We have a question from Darlene, who is asking about what impact you think video conferencing is going to have on business travel when travel starts to begin, when travel demand starts to return in the future.
I think video technology will replace some business travel. I think it'll replace some travel, period, because people will be able to. They're more familiar with these tools as they've grown in use. The companies that market these tools will improve the quality of the service. I don't think the quality of the service still is great yet. It's still pretty. It feels like it's still a little premature before its time. But I think it's going. Video tools will serve to complement business travel, but not be a substitute for business travel. And what I mean by that is, many of us that have been road warriors for years are familiar with taking red-eye flights to Europe to see somebody for a few hours and jump back on the plane that same day to get back for another meeting in your office or to another destination, or the trips that are really tough and are really not productive are going to go by the wayside, and that's going to be okay, because those are the types of trips that are not, they should not be part of our business model because they're not resilient. When times are tough, those are the trips that get canceled by businesses to begin with. Those are the first things to go, and we shouldn't build our business around assuming those trips are going to be a part of what we deliver for customers. Customers will still be able to do that, but I think that the quality of the trips and the quality of the experiences will be more durable into the future. I do think that video technology will be used probably for more internal sessions. Companies will not be having as many meetings for internal purposes as they would ordinarily. But I think for external purposes, to get out to clients and to get out to collaborate into the marketplace, I think business travel will fully be back to where it was, because people need to be with other people. The spirit needs to be present in order to collaborate and create and explore. It just doesn't happen over technology. I'd say most businesses have Zoom fatigue or video fatigue, and the last thing many business people want to do is get on another all-day set of video call. It's hard. It's very productive. It's very efficient, but it lacks relationship, and relationship is, I think, one of the things that's most important to business that students need to understand. You can learn all the tools, and the textbooks can teach you everything you need to know about being ready to get into the world, but it's going to be your relationship skills and your persuasion and your ability of influence that's going to determine the level of success and your ability to grow. into your jobs and to mentor people and to be mentored and sponsored. None of that happens through technology. So I think the quality of our experiences are going to be more paramount than ever. And people are going to invest their time to ensure they maintain that experience.
And we have time for one final question, then we'll hand it back to the Dean for her closing thoughts. And that question is from Jay. Jay is asking, how do you plan to execute your strategy around having a diverse leadership team?
Well, we are looking at our diversity numbers, and our diversity numbers in aggregate at Delta are not bad. We have about 40% of our employees at Delta are people of color, and about 30% of our leadership team in aggregate are people of color. About 20% of our top leaders are people of color. So long ways to go to improve, but we've got not a bad performance that has improved over time. The challenge we face, though, is when you disaggregate the information and you look within the numbers, you can see the suffering that the Black community specifically has experienced. And our Black members of Delta have not kept up at the same pace as other people of color have within the company. And we're going to be very focused on that as to what are the reasons why and the tools and opportunities that we can have to evaluate where we can improve the opportunity for our Black community within Delta, and they exist, whether it's in technology or any part of the company. We have a couple parts of our business that are really hard to break into around diversity. It's going to take some time, such as our pilots and our mechanics, but we're working on programs with schools and colleges and networks to try to improve representation in some of those skills. But I think a lot of it's just focus. A lot of it's about being unapologetic about identifying opportunities that we're going to make certain that a Black individual gets hired, and they're going to be a highly qualified talent for that space. And we're going to be unapologetic because we know, and speaking as a white man, I know I've been privileged by the system that's gotten me to where I'm at, as well as my leadership team, who's mostly consists of white male. We've got to stop, and we've got to lift arms and put arms around our Black colleagues specifically, but other people of color as well, to find out what we can do to use our influence, our privilege, our positions to bring them forward into the future. And I think if I think about everything from the pandemic, that will be the one thing that I will take from this that will be lasting, is that we will recover our business travel and our consumers over the next couple of years. But we realize racial equity is not a 2-year journey. It's a continuous journey of constant improvement and constant growth. And that's something that's been crystal clear to me, that we'll fail if we don't succeed on that front.
Thank you, Ed. And with that, we'll turn it over to the Dean for her final remarks.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank Ed for giving us this unique opportunity to learn about leadership in times of crisis by sharing your experiences and invaluable insights. I also want to thank you and thank our audience for joining us tonight. I hope you have enjoyed the conversation with Ed Bastian, CEO of Delta Airlines, as much as I have. This concludes our program. Stay well and good night.
Thank you, Maryam. And fly Delta.
Always, always.